My name's Sean Wilson, Senior Product Marketing Manager for Skype for Business. I own deployment, operations, and manageability within Skype for Business. My background, though, was before I was in marketing, I actually ran Link for us internally on-prem in Microsoft IT. So I actually was responsible for 170,000 users. I lived through all the challenges that persist in running a multinational corporation across a bunch of different entities and deployments and implementations. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Skype Operations Framework. I am not going to do a training session on it. I'm going to get you teased a little bit into it to really kind of figure out where it plays and what you do. I'm gonna take just a quick show of hands, and I'm going to cover my eyes so I can see your light. How many of you are partners? Okay, so I got 5 partners in here. So the rest of you are practitioners, I'm assuming. So let me talk a little bit about Skype Operations Framework as we go forward. But as you think about Skype Operations Framework, I want you to think about some of these questions. These are questions that come up like, hey, how do we ensure quality of network to ensure we've got good calls? What are the right partners to help me if I want to not have to operate it myself? Or, hey, how do I become that right operations arm for ensuring it ongoing? This deck will be made available to you afterwards, so you can actually have all the information that's in it, because in about 5 slides, your brain would collapse trying to read all the words, because there's a lot of information, and I want you to be able to consume this after we leave. But I'm also going to take you through not only a journey of Skype Operations Framework, but I'm also going to take you through what it is to utilize the assets and some of the pieces there. So let's talk a little bit about the cloud. So this shift to the cloud requires a rethinking of how you plan, deliver, and operate in Skype for Business Online. And the reason I say a rethink, so if we take it as an analogy of our water system in our house, okay? Historically, if you went back 35, 40 years to a rural area, you had a well. And in your house, you were responsible for your well, the pump that ran that infrastructure all the way to the house. Then you were also responsible for the plumbing in the house, all the fixtures in the house, as well as your sewer. Think of that very similar to your on-prem world, right? You're responsible for the servers, you're responsible for the network, you're responsible for power and AC, right? Power and cooling, you're responsible for making sure all the bits are up to date and running. Now, one of the differences is as you move to the cloud, it's very similarly as we've now moved to a utility company providing us that water, right? We are responsible for all the infrastructure within our house to receive that water, yet we're relying on the service, the water company, to deliver that water to us and to make sure that our pipes in the house and our fixtures are all clean, that our drains aren't clogged. Same concept goes when you move your services to the cloud, because you still need to make sure that your ecosystem that you control within your enterprise environment is ready to be able to take on that utility or service in the form of Office 365 and Skype for Business. So let me introduce you a little bit to Skype Operations Framework. It is birthed out of the necessity to help customers and partners with this transition to the cloud. Traditionally, partners have had very rich on-prem practices, and they had built their operating procedures around it, they had built their practices around it, and it was very familiar. As we moved to the cloud, we actually identified that there's a different mentality that has to come with it. And so one of the things that we actually did is we took the best architects and consultants that we had within Microsoft and even some partners, and we actually built an end-to-end guidance and methodology called Skype Operations Framework. Now, this practical guidance includes things like tools, checklists, scripts, right? But it also is an end-to-end guidance through plan, deliver, and operate. Okay? And so that's the practical guidance piece. We created a bunch of these assets, these scripts, these tools for customers and partners to use. But then we also said, by the way, it's not just a matter of giving it to you. How many people here love going out to TechNet and just reading articles? Right? Nobody does. We go to TechNet because we have a problem we want to solve, and so we read the article we need to solve it at that point. And so what we did is we actually created the Skype Operations Framework Academy. And what this allows us to do is actually break down all the different pieces within the Skype Operations Framework into consumable pieces, and lets partners and customers consume that through the Academy. And actually build an assessment based on that for your familiarization, specifically more for our partner side. But it really is for customers and partners. And I tell a story, well, I've not told a story a few times, but if you think about where a customer, where Microsoft Fast Track, and where partners fit in, is that a customer that has a rich UC practice, has been living in the Skype and Link world for a long time. I met with one in the UK a few months back, and he's been with us since LCS. He's deployed it. He's got enterprise voice deployed, very knowledgeable. He and his team would be a great consumer of the Skype Operations Framework information because he knows the practices and it just helps him build it into that practical guidance. The other is Microsoft provides for our customers the Fast Track program, and that is a remote guidance that is adopting that Skype Operations Framework for plan and deliver to help people when they're doing it. If they don't have that rich PMO and don't have that process, really helps them with the day-to-day, these are the right steps to take in the right format. Think of it as the remote guidance for Skype Operations Framework. But really the key to this is also then the partner element, which is really, if you are undertaking this and you want to take Skype for Business Online to the next level, either getting it deployed from scratch, or you want to do it from a moving and migrating to the cloud, then there's a great opportunity to partner with the partners that are also consuming the same information so that you and the partner have the same language, same taxonomy, and same understanding as you go forward. So I like to talk to this as almost like a layer cake, if we think of it. And the key is there are phases, which is plan, deliver, and operate. And within each of those, and we're going to break it down, each of those has what we call stages or elements of that. So if you think of it, it's going to include different pieces within plan that might be something around envision and design, assess, and you'll see what those mean. But the other pieces to that is that actually encompasses a bunch of tools and assets and activities in a very pragmatic, practical way that enables you as a partner or a customer to understand how to get deployed or migrate to the cloud and to really focus on ensuring quality. And a lot of that is looking at what your business outcomes are. So I've kind of talked to this, but really it is a scalable, repeatable process that regardless of who I'm talking to in that ecosystem, we can all have the same taxonomy. This has always been a challenge. Who here has ever gone to deploy something within your company and there's a new person on the team and you refer to one thing as one thing and they refer to it as another, and it ends up confusing stakeholders because you have two different meetings and two different status reports and they say different things. This gives you that common framework, that common taxonomy that's important throughout all the phases so that you make sure that you hit the right business outcomes. So as we say that it's a rethink, right, is you have to take it into account that it's not just a framework. So if I say Skype Operations Framework, it's actually more than that. It started off as a framework, which was a bunch of practical guidance, tools, assets, and whatever. But the thing that it's actually done is it's built into an ecosystem that's helping our partners and customers learn what it means to move unified communications to the cloud. Okay? So if you think about it, how many people here are deployed on-prem? Okay. So how many people here are looking to go to the cloud? Okay, I'm hoping everybody in the room, right? As you look to go to the cloud, you have different considerations to take into account. And because it's a new space for not only our partners, but for our customers, And it's an ever-evolving. Anybody that was in my previous session heard me talk about the constant innovation. We'll talk a little bit about that. But like, you want to have the practical guidance on how to plan, deliver, and operate a Skype room system that comes into your ecosystem, right? Or how to take account of Cloud PBX. So, last one was repeat. So, one of the things I want to talk about is in each of these phases, what those stages look like and what the outcomes really are. The core behind Skype Operations Framework is to ensure quality of your deployment. Who's the most important, I should say, who or what is the most important thing in any deployment? End users, right? Well, we know that if you have problematic network, or you have users that don't understand what it means to have the proper device, or heck, your end users don't even know that there is a client on their desktop that can do more than just IM and presence, you're not going to see the business value out of those that you're looking for out of those outcomes. And so quality could be quality of adoption, quality of experience. And so Skype Operations Framework takes into account all those elements, all the way from the very, very first envisioning. And there's actually an envisioning workshop that allows you to start that conversation. And I'll show you what it looks like broken down on the site, because it's actually quite user-friendly depending on what your topology looks like and some of the quick start pieces. And we'll do that in just a little bit. We'll walk through what that looks like. One of the biggest pieces around assessment is network assessment. When you move to the cloud, you now have a very important relationship with your internet connection, right? Everything's delivered from the cloud. Everything's real-time media, which means you're now dealing with voice, you're dealing with video running over the public internet. We know that typically the number one problem is the reliability from that absolute aggregation point of your network to the Office 365 services. However, to get to that aggregation point in your network can actually add a ton of complexity as you start to think about things like internet egress congestion, because you have now moved all your voice and video traffic through your internet egress as well as everything else without taking into account some of the key pieces. And so we've actually built some network assessment tools and practices within Skype Operations Framework to know that you're ready for the cloud. And then really, what's that design? What's that architecture? And making sure that that ecosystem is prepared before you go and try to deploy the first box, right? Who here has ever deployed a CRM solution? Anyone? Okay. Now, when you deploy a CRM solution, there's two ways you can do it. One, you use a consultant or partner that knows how to get the business practices and develop it and deliver it correctly. The other way is it's self-deployed, and it's the world's largest, most expensive contact management solution that Outlook could have done, right? So it's the same concept. You don't want to start without doing your due diligence, and that's really that plan phase. And the key assets we're going to walk through in a minute of what those look like, both for getting deployed net new or if you're migrating from on-prem. As we talk about deliver, okay, adopt, I go to adopt in this one because adopt is under the deliver phase, because we all think, hey, if I'm setting the service out, that's when I think about adoption. Adoption should be the very first thing you think about. Your business outcome is directly tied to adoption. Your ROI is tied to how effective you are. And so by that whole planning phase of incorporating things like, what are my sites? What are my roles? What are my personas? What are the people that I need to enable first? Who do I move first? Those are all part of adoption. And also understanding the cultural elements that maintain within that adoption phase. So we give an entire framework that really starts back at Envision, but the actual activities of adopt, of things like running the workshops and the executive communications and things like that, fall within this adopt phase. But who here is familiar with the old ITIL model? Okay, I got a couple over there, right? IT service life cycles, right? The fact is, plan, deploy, operate has been around for years. This is SOF, the Skype Operations Framework is an adaptation of that to really focus on how we think of things in the cloud, because things that happen from an enhanced standpoint typically would go all the way back to plan in a traditional lifecycle model. Except in this case, when you start dealing with enhancements around deployment, you're now able to enhance at your local level without having to specifically think about the operations of service. The big piece here, though, is operate. You know, one of the biggest requests, and I ran Skype and Link for us internally, was, hey, what's the best way to operate Skype for Business? What are the tools in place that help me ensure quality going forward? And one of the things that we learned, and actually is our newest release, came out on Monday, and I'll show you guys what it looks like, but it really is helping us focusing on that quality of operations. Looking at things like, who here was in the session I did this morning? The majority of you? Okay, so I brought up the new location enhanced reporting. That same concept of location enhanced reporting is key within that operate phase to truly mitigate things before they become an escalation. You can start to see trending long before end users are truly impacted. So we'll walk through a little bit more of that. But I like to show this slide really as thinking of it as the blue is our plan, the green is deliver, and yellow is operate. And these are really the amount of effort over time that you will really have to think about. Now, remember I talked about being in the cloud, you are having to always consider new features, new innovation, new things that come. Great example, the Mac client that I showcased earlier, that I talked about how we put a lot of effort and design into it. Well, it's a new design, which meant that if I was in an ecosystem where I was on-prem and I wasn't set up with edge services, I now have to take into consideration how I'm going to have a new application that runs off the web technologies within Skype for Business run. Well, part of Skype Operations Framework is it's a living, breathing framework. So as we bring out these new features, we also bring you that same planning, deliver, and operate for those new features. Okay. And so just as you look at this and your time through lifecycle, is that really you're going to spend a lot of time up front to make sure that you are set. But one of the biggest pieces, and this is where I will say IT is the biggest challenge, and that is how do we address the soft skills element of adoption and change management as a user impact level? How many, and I'm asking, I know I asked lots of questions, but it's mainly, how many of you are IT practitioners, like an IT pro? Okay. How many of you are IT managers? Okay. So as an IT manager, I'm going to go to the IT managers. Would you I'm going to guess for the group, you can shout out if you want, but I would guess that probably the number one area that we can improve is how we communicate with our end users. Right? I know that I get an email from IT, even when I was in IT and I didn't read it, right? And I would see, hey, my mailbox is migrating, and it says go do this, this, and this, and you know, I come in on Tuesday morning and my email's not working, and so I'm like, well, why is it not working? And you know, I futz with it for 45 minutes, and then I call the help desk, and they're like, well, did you do what we told you to do? And I'm like, no. And so we actually give a lot of those core things and processes around in that deliver phase of how to actually go and effectively communicate with end users. And then the operations we'll walk through some of the key assets that we've delivered on what to look for when we do it. And then really how you then go and take some of the trainings that we've actually provided. They all are publicly available, and I'll show you those so you can really take that to the next level. So these are the same similar questions that I put on the first one. But are these the questions that you think of? What are some of the other questions that pop into your mind when you think of, hey, I want to move to the cloud? What does it mean for me? Now, when you say what does it mean for me, are you meaning as in IT or as in the user? Excellent. Yeah, so one of the questions that comes from that is, should the user know that the service is being delivered by the cloud or delivered by you? Doesn't matter. The only thing that is actually important is that the user is able to take advantage of the innovation of the cloud, feel 100% trust and confidence in what it is. And the pieces to that is there's a trust you have in Office 365 and Skype for Business. And then there is a piece that you have trust in your entire ecosystem from top to bottom. And that is what SOF, or Skype Operations Framework, was built to do, was to help you have the confidence in your elements that you own and control in the ecosystem. And your number one thing that you own is the network, because it is the one thing that can be a linchpin in any real-time communications world. There's also some other things to think about. So I'm going to tell a little story because I came from Microsoft. So it says use the current client versions. So Anthony's heard this story a couple times, but when I was in MSIT, we would do a client version report. And at one point, we had 256 versions of Lync or Skype running at one time. Obviously not an ideal scenario, right? We were running it because of test and dev and pieces like that. But what we find is that even in a controlled environment, people can be 2 and 3 versions back on the client. And what that does is it does a couple things. One, it means that they might not have received bug fixes. It might mean that they're not realizing, your users are not realizing the innovation. So one of the nice things about the Office 365 Pro Plus click-to-run client is that you do get those bits when you want them, and you're not having to require on going and pulling the SCCM pack and then pushing it, and then, oh, by the way, your user gets that notice that they have to shut their computer down because they've got to go and reboot because they just took a patch. And the ability for them to choose when they're taking those updates. Other things, this one's a really interesting one. Proxies and WAN optimization devices. A lot of companies have them. If you're running real-time media, specifically in Skype for Business, it's already encrypted, which is what a lot of the proxies are there to do, is to ensure that your traffic is your traffic. And they're coming and leaving through a trusted source. So the key is to bypass those devices and rule sets. However, we know companies can't do that, right? There's some companies that won't. Their CISO says, by the way, all traffic goes through this. And so we actually are working with providers to be able to have their things not inspect that traffic, because they don't need to, because it's already encrypted from a trusted source. You know, I will tell you, my number one thing, VPNs. Who here connects to Skype via VPN? And if you do, I'm going to call you out. Okay. I have sat with customers, very large network-based customers, that have said, oh, no, you can't come through Edge. You have to come in VPN'd in. And I'm like, so you're going to encrypt an encrypted channel that's running real-time communications. That's no bueno. Not good. So being able to do split tunnel VPNs. And really, some of the other things that are there, like think about QoS, think about how you manage. QoS on your own WAN, up to your point of egress and ingress, is actually some of the most important configurations you can do. And the biggest and most important reason why is because if you could control your network, we know the internet, majority of the time, is a big highway. It has congestion points. And so that's why you will do your network assessment to understand what your network is like to get to and from the Office 365 and Skype for Business Edge. But then you need to take a look at your network, and QoS is one of those key pieces to that. So let's dive in a little bit into some of the pieces within these sections. So as I said before, Skype Operations Framework came out in July, and we launched Get Deployed, which was great for people that didn't have Skype for Business. They didn't have an understanding of what it meant to go to the cloud for online communications and for Skype for Business. And so we built an entire practice or practical guidance around Get Deployed. And so as you go into this, that was our first step. Well, what do you think the next step was? The next step was every one of our customers that already had on-prem that we've been saying, hey, by the way, move your stuff over to the cloud. It's great. But we had given them practical guidance there, hadn't necessarily done it when we were talking about moving to cloud migration to the cloud. And so that's where we took the cloud migration story. And this takes, the first one had over 60 different assets. So checklists, decks, training, tools, from how to run an envisioning workshop with your different stakeholders to how do you look at assessments for your network. Well, when you move to cloud migration, you now have a very different way of looking at your network, because it's not all about egress. It's now also what's your connection between your on-prem and Office 365, what's your connection on if you happen to be using on-prem PSTN connectivity and you're looking at that versus meetings. So we had to take a look at what the cloud migration path looked like, and so we built that out. So if I look at this, and this is where I was saying this is an eye chart. I'm not going to dig into each of these, but you can look, I'm actually going to step over here. You can look that we actually bring specific activities. Remember I said that adoption started at day one? Well, it's defining what success looks like. And so what you do is you actually build out, as part of those activities, what your adoption success looks like and what that outcome is from business. And so we actually build an outcome model for all of these different activities within Skype Operations Framework. So if you had no idea how you were going to go and get deployed or move to the cloud, you now have a practical guidance from A to Z on how to do this. Now, our partners are also taking this same framework and bringing it into their practice so that they can also help customers, the same as we are, right, to get from either where they are today with Skype for Business on-prem in some form or greenfield, net new. As we look, though, into deliver, delivery is one of those ones I like to refer to it as the moment that you drop the first box, right, or you order the first circuit. Because some of the pieces that happen within deploy you have to do at the tenant level to get your tenants prepared, making sure that Azure AD is fully configured and set up, making sure that if you're in that migration that you're able to set up your hybrid configuration before you ever enable any services within the cloud, right? There's a lot of that legwork we've got to do, and we walk you through all of those pieces, including giving you the scripts that you need to use to potentially move users, mass move of users, as well as also how to follow a site plan. So let's say you have 15 sites and you'd plan them. Hey, how do we make sure we prioritize and make sure we do each one as we need to and we ensure quality and success? And what are those benchmarks, right? Under that enhance is you're going to identify when you've rolled that out that there are some things that you need to continue to work on. And how do you do that? As well as in enhance is also when you start to see some of those new features light up. Like, hey, guess what? We just enabled video-based screen sharing. What does that impact for your users in certain locations as you're watching your call rates change, right? And you're also able to pull that feedback in the operate phase, which is the next one, which is really, I can monitor the call quality, but I can also pull in reporting that tells me, hey, at the end of a call, the user, you guys have all seen this in the original Skype, where you can choose your call quality experience, like 1 to 5. I think it exists now on every single, I think Facebook Messenger does it now too. Hey, how is the quality of your call? Well, as an IT pro, you can actually see those results and what they trend over time. So, and be able to pull verbatims into that so that you can start to go back to that enhance. Because remember, it's a life cycle. It's not a one and done experience. And so as you also then look at what your reports are, those reports tie back to your business outcomes that you defined back in that very first piece. And so understanding that it's a life cycle of what it means to run. We've also got some additional tools that are in there that you'll see when we go through it, the site, that really help for helping users and IT practitioners use the same language to make sure that they're running the services they want. If you ask somebody, what was the quality of your call? And is that an objective or subjective? It's subjective, right? It's how did I experience it? How did I take it? Well, if I'm in IT and they subjectively say it was not a good experience, and I go and objectively look at their call data and it says it was a great experience, there's a disconnect. And so what you'll actually see, typically they're very aligned unless there's some other elements that are out there. And one of the things that we are driving with that is not only with CQD, the call quality dashboard, but what we're bringing with the call analytics that's previewing later this month, is it gives you that additional element to step in and say, hey, what was actually the true experience at a user level? If I start seeing trends, is there a trend of people using speakers and mics? I'll use a scenario when I was at Microsoft. So in 2012, we came out with Windows 8. And Steve Ballmer said, hey, by the way, everybody at Microsoft's getting a touch computer. And we were all like, awesome. And so we all got these touch computers. None of them had the same display interface, right? VGA had been the de facto for 30 years. And now we moved to all these different ones. Is it DisplayPort? Is it HDMI, mini HDMI, micro HDMI, like regular DisplayPort, like the old HP machines, right? And so we had that, but what you did is when you went to that profile, you also reduced the number of USB ports that a computer had. And you got rid of the Ethernet cable. So as we went through that, we identified that there are 3 or 4 different things that were happening just by that migration. And the number one impact that we saw when we did it was that we got rid of our Ethernet port. And we went from 35% of people using Wi-Fi for their meetings to 90% using them for their meetings and online. Well, and when we did that, our wireless network was not built for voice. It was built for data years before. And so we had to go back and root cause and identify this. And so a lot of what Skype Operations Framework does is it gives you that stuff ahead of time to say, okay, are you meeting these thresholds? Is this where you are? What are the tasks you need to do to make sure you're successful? So one of the things that we want to talk about is I talk a little bit about Skype Operations Framework as being new, right? Or ever evolving, not even new, but ever evolving. And the reason that I bring that up is because the innovation that happens in the cloud is always going to be new, okay? We will have updates to the Cloud Connector Edition, which will allow you new functionality. Well, you need to be able to understand what that means if I'm going to bring that into my environment. I need to also understand that when the new Skype Room Systems comes out, what does that mean for me from a provisioning standpoint and planning and implementation? And then, oh, by the way, training for my end users so that adoption's there. Because there's nothing worse than going to your CIO and saying, hey, I want to put this in. And then you go to put it in and you've spent all this money. Like, I like the version of telepresence, right? Telepresence, oh, we need telepresence. And then we see that utilization's around 12 to 20%. Well, you need to make sure that you've got all those pieces in place so that you're getting the business value right off the bat. And so you'll see some things that we've done, and I'm going to show it to you now. I'll show you Quick Start. I'm going to show you some of our partners and what that assessment looks like. And then I'm also going to take you into the academy and the community, because I think if you understand that Skype Operations Framework started as practical guidance, and it has evolved in, 5.5 months, 6 months, into a community that is very active, that has lots of content and training, but it's also a real-time feedback engine. If you're going and you're using this asset and this asset isn't working, or it's not hitting the mark, then we want to make sure that we're addressing that for you. And so we have a feedback engine into that. So let's take a look real quick at what the Skype Operations Framework website looks like. So part of the challenges that are faced when we deal with any new tool is we don't know where to start, right? So how many people here remember the day they decided to go to the Office 365 website, click free trial, and then didn't know where to go from there, right? Number of years ago, you'd go in and you had like multiple steps and you'd do it. We've gotten better about walking you through the guidance and things because we learned it. And we've done the same thing. Skype Operations Framework has been publicly available since the 10th of July of last year. Through it, we have actually built in a whole bunch of different pieces from the academy, the feedback, the ability to learn. But this is my personal favorite. So let's pull a scenario. I'm going to pick on somebody in the room. Gentleman in the back. He was here early. He's going to get picked on. What's your name? Nick. So Nick, tell me what your ecosystem is right now.
Well, internally, work for partners, but internally we use Skype
You're Skype Online only?
Yep.
Excellent. And are you single site, multi-site, or multinational?
Pretty much single site.
Oh, okay. Great. So the reason that I actually did that's actually a great example of where we went to learn to customize this. Because as if you're Skype for Business Online and you're wanting to take advantage of some of the advanced workloads like Cloud PBX, PSTN conferencing. One of the things you'll notice is over on the right-hand side here, it shows the single site, multi-site, multinational, but it also shows you all of the different things that your discussions you're gonna have. And as I do that, so if I click here, it actually gives me the assets that I would need to download for these conversations. If I can close that. So I can actually make this move. Actually gives me the ability on how to configure CQD for Skype for Business Online, right? So these are the different steps that you're going to take, and we break it out on a piece-by-piece basis. When we first started, it was a download site, and it was 60 assets that you downloaded in a big old zip file. And we gave you the guidance, we gave you the Visio of how to walk through it, but the key feedback was, I need something that's more consumable at all levels, quicker and easier if I want to focus on one thing. Now, if I wanted to come in here and I say, hey, so you'll notice this is a project discussion is 1 hour. If I go to a multinational company, my week one has a lot less in it because I've got a lot more to do. Because I'm now having to do that project initiation discussion, probably 2 hours, because I'm now dealing with multiple countries, I'm dealing with multiple people, and I've got a much more complex business world. And so a lot of what we did was, hey, how do we give you access to the pieces that are there? Now, tied to all of this is where I talked about the academy. And so if you want to think of all the different things that we've done, every single one of those that's there that you can see is an actual, not only a document that you would use, but it would also be a video recording of the training session from the engineers that built this. Now, you can go to different organizations to do their training programs, and they come in and they say, hey, by the way, you're going to do these training, this is what you're going to do, and you have to come and visit us. Not only do we make this available, it's available for free for all of our customers and partners. And the reason is your success dictates our success, right? So as I start to look at it, I take a look at it and I have the ability to come in and learn. One of the other pieces I really wanted to kind of take a peek at is the community. Let's go open up another page. Microsoft moved to a Microsoft Tech Communities. Any of you members of the tech community? Okay. So I'm going to encourage you to go at the end. There's a short URL. But go join the Skype for Business community. Not only do you get to talk to people that are your colleagues and peers in your own space, but you also get to work with the engineering teams that are listening in. And Skype Operations Framework has an entirely dedicated section underneath the framework because it's important that we allow people to have a community around that framework and ask questions and dig in, and specifically the SOF engineers and architects live and breathe in that ecosystem, okay? So one of the last things that I wanted to kind of touch on is if I go in and I go to the SOF Partners page, because I don't know who I want to talk to. What you've got here is you've got two things. You've got all of our partners that have gone through and completed the assessments and met the requirements for Skype Operations Framework. This does not mean this is the only partners that have gone and done SOF training, okay? These are the first partners that we've aligned with that allow us to do that. Now we've got partners that have actually gone and done most of the trainings, they just haven't done the assessments. They haven't met the requirements and reached out to be part of the program. They will, they're gonna continue to grow as this is a living and breathing framework. But this was built to help our partners accelerate their cloud practice. But one of the things, there's a place here I wanted to show you, which is downloads. Do you remember I told you there were 60 assets? There's quite a few assets. The reason that I went to the downloads page specifically for this is if there is a specific asset that you want and you don't know where to find it, you can actually come here and grab it, okay? More importantly is that if you are like some of the IT shops that I know that are very well versed and they've got a large UC practice and they've been doing this for years, they come over here, they hit download all, they download it all into the zip, and then they consume the pieces they need throughout it while they're doing the training, okay? So one of the pieces that's actually included in there is a network assessment tool. And this is what we call our simple network assessment. The key is you're gonna get to a point where you might or might not meet the requirements for cloud voice based on your network. And at that point, you're gonna have to do some advanced remediation, right? Well, at that point, some people in-house have the capabilities. At that point, find a partner. Find a partner that understands network, understands your network, understands Skype for Business, that truly can help you mitigate your network challenges to get to the point to meet those requirements. So some of those assets that really, for us, when we initially launched, we gave guidance saying you need to meet this number of milliseconds of travel, you need to ensure this level of zero packet loss, you had to have a MOS score of X. And what we realized is everybody's like, well, that's great, how do I go and get it? So internally, our media team built an assessment tool that allows you, as an individual, to go and run from a site-by-site basis your network assessment. And so you can truly find out, do you pass the requirements for the network assessment for Skype Operations Framework, for Skype for Business Online, to ensure what? Come on. Quality. Quality, ensure quality. So one of the challenges is QoS on your network's great. When you hit the public internet, you're at your own thing. Now, Microsoft has a product called Azure Express Route, okay? And there's Express Route for Office 365. However, the requirement for it is that you don't meet your network requirements or you have a security requirement, because it's not recommended or required, it's on a case-by-case basis. Because if I have a business that has 5 sites around the world and they don't have a WAN and they're just internet connected and they always have been, there's no point for me to go and put in a dedicated pipe to each of those for Office 365 if they've been living in that world already. On the other hand, if I happen to be in a critical care unit that has a telehealth unit, I might want to ensure I've got QoS end to end. And so I'm gonna have different business cases, business values, that is part of that business outcomes that we talk about, that you learn about when you do the full Skype Operations Framework breakdown. We also, one of the other things that we did is we actually used that tool in our customers before, and all of these practices, before we ever bring it out to Skype Operations Framework. So we have about 100 customers these engineers work with, and they prove it, building out all of these practices and refine it. and then go to a core set of our partners to validate before we ever bring it out into the public. So if you think about our envisioning workshop, or you think about our adoption framework had been delivered at over 65 different companies in its current state before it ever made it into the Skype Operations Framework. So now, one of the things that's nice in here, how many of you have the luxury of having a PMO run your projects? Okay, so you guys are the partners raised their hands, which is good, right? But one of the things that we did with Skype Operations Framework is we actually built in a site rollout and migration playbook, which imagine that little tabs that you could go through and see where you were, but it's actually broken down into a week-by-week matrix that you can actually incorporate, so you have a playbook. Now, Skype practices in partners have had this for on-prem for years in their own form and fashion. It might be a project plan, it might be, but when you move to the cloud, it's a little bit of a different game. Also, for the partners, they're not selling boxes, they're now working with you on services. And one of the biggest pieces to Skype Operations Framework is the last of the phases, which is operate. Operating Skype for Business is a challenge because it is, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. If you take a look at it, we deal with every element of the ecosystem. We deal with Active Directory. We deal with DNS. We deal with network. We deal with client. We deal with OS. We deal with server. We deal with hardware issues like graphics cards. So if you think of how Skype for Business comes into that entire playbook, the operate phase of having somebody being able to look and understand the trends that they're seeing in call quality dashboard or in any of the reporting that you've got going on, they know what to look for, and they've been doing this. So one of the biggest pieces we've done is enabling our partners within that operate phase to become managed service providers under SOF. On the other side of that, it's also a great opportunity for partners to help you bolster your own internal teams, even if it's a ramping portion, because you've got a large operations team, but you want to now take this on. Say you were doing it for another workload previously. So if we really unbox it and think of it simply, what do you get? You get a bunch of tools. And it's a bunch of experiences we've gotten from Microsoft and partners and architects and stuff like that. But really, it's the consolidated knowledge on how to think end-to-end about planning and deploying Skype for Business. Okay. Why? Well, how many of you have delivered or deployed a solution that just didn't land? You deployed it, it was at either at the customer or on-prem, on your own customer premises. You deployed it, you thought everybody was going to love it, and then it didn't work. Well, most of the times that happens is one of two reasons. One, you have your own personal prerogative because you like the technology, because we're in IT and we like to play with technology. But really, when it comes down to it, is that the business value or to the end users was either not conveyed or not understood ahead of time. So if I'm a customer, let's say I happen to have WebEx and I decide I want to go from WebEx to Skype for Business Online. Okay, what are some of the things I have to take into consideration? Well, as I start to go through this, I'm going to want to know what I have to take into consideration as I go forward with this. Because I might just think, well, it's just replacing one with the other. But it's not. You've got some training pieces to think about. You've got whitelisting that you had as WebEx and Cisco. You now have Microsoft and Link and Skype for Business, right? There's some other elements. And so you want to minimize that risk. Maximize your ROI and your business success. And, you know, one of the things of why they say who. So it is for our customers. Skype Operations Framework is for our customers. How it is consumed, though, varies. It could be consumed by a partner that does it end-to-end for you because you're like, look, I don't understand this practice. I know my business. I can help them with the business outcomes. I can work with them. But I need them to do all the heavy lifting from the planning all the way through delivery and operate. The other option to this is, hey, you know what? I want to do this and I want to consume it delivered by Microsoft with Fast Track. And if Fast Track's working on it with you and they get to a point and they say, look, you've got some remediation, you've got some stuff you do, they punt you to those partners to help you. But ultimately, it's for our customers, and some large customers will feel okay taking this and consuming it. But one of the pieces for you to understand is understanding you or as a partner, your role as a customer or partner, what your role and how you want to do this is to what level you're going to consume this. But this is the de facto deployment methodology that exists. So I kind of beat on the managed service provider for a little bit. This was our driving goal when we started in this, was to say, look, we understand that operates hard. We also understand that more and more companies are shifting from the physical spindle management and the physical hands-on management to, and I don't want to say vendor management because that's not the right way, but much more to the circle of influence of dealing with things like understanding the network implications, being able to work across desktop and collaboration. If you think back 10 years ago, okay, the server team was the server team, right? And they got a drop from network. They didn't talk to each other. They didn't work. Here's my requirement. Please get me this drop. If you think of it 5 years later, you now have collaboration technologies that are sitting in the desktop that are now having to work with the hardware team that's working with help desk, that's working with server, because now, let's say they were running terminal services or whatever it is. Well, now fast forward to today where you've got mobile, the mobile experience. We talk about planning for our end users. Do you plan your mobile experiences for unified communications at a mobile level? You should. You know what your breakdown is? What's your manageability structure? Well, as you look at these larger partners that go into the managed, and not even larger, but these managed service providers that are partners that have taken their thing to the operate level, they are able to bring values to services that traditionally we would have housed in-house, retrained somebody to bring in, and they've got that capability. And so we give not only you as an operations, but our partners and those managed service providers the insights into how to deliver Skype Operations Framework. So what does it take to start? Okay. So I kind of talked about this. We've got 70 partners that are trained and certified on Skype for Business in the framework, right? And the partners that are there to help you through this are key. And I've kind of beaten the horse a little bit, beaten the stick, or whatever you want to phrase it, is the fact is, honestly, if I was going to tell you a net new person that comes up to me and says, hey, I'm thinking about Skype for Business and how to deploy, what should I do? And I'm going to say, well, the first thing you should do is you should engage with your account team to engage with Fast Track and engage with the partner along with that. Because the partner will be able to add services on site that somebody else can't, like network remediation, okay? Or they also will be able to run adoption workshops for you on site versus just handing you all of the templates and here's the playbook and this is how you do it, and then you go do it. Because in IT, it was very difficult for me to focus on the technical deployment aspects while also thinking about what am I doing from a change management and end user standpoint. And so we actually have at Microsoft an entire group that specifically owns the IT communications to end users and adoption framework, and they took a lot of this stuff to implement it specifically for Skype. And we refer to it as Skype at Microsoft. It's a dedicated service that's offered from our internal IT Marcom that took a lot of the same practices in our adoption pieces. So I talked a little bit about the assessment, and the reason I brought up the assessment is this is your opportunity after you've gone through the different courseworks to actually say that you have passed the Microsoft Skype Operations Framework assessment. This is not a 553. This is not a course for your MC certifications, okay? But it does give you as an individual, if you're in the company, it gives you the individual to say, hey, yes, I understand and I've comprehended this. From a partner standpoint, this is part of the practice to become a partner is to go through and have these assessments. And if you go to the Skype Operations Framework site under partner, there's more details on how to become a Skype Operations partner. So we talked a little bit about that community. How many people here remember the old Yahoo groups, right? And you all belong to one that had some form or fashion of topics that we covered. Well, the SOF community is like-minded individuals that are in a point of Skype and deployment and understanding the pitfalls. It's a great place to consume information. It's a great place to share information. There's also the Skype for Business community that's tied to this too, which gives you, even beyond the deployment and operations, it gives you a community to ask questions. It gives you a community to join the broadcasts that we do every 2 weeks on whatever our new topic is. Last week, it happened to be the new release for Skype Operations Framework. For next week, it's going to be Advanced Analytics. Week after that, I think, is where we've come with mobile. And you get the deep dives and you get the demos, right? So it's about building that community. So the biggest hurdle any group has, Microsoft, in companies, in IT, is soliciting feedback. Because we've got two types of feedback. You got the anecdotal, and you got the screaming. Right? You got the anecdotal. Hey, you know, this one time I had a call and it was horrible and Skype sucks. And you go and you ask for details. They couldn't tell you. It was 5 months ago on their back porch on a Friday afternoon over Wi-Fi. And they were using their laptop speaker and mic when you go and dig in. The other one are the people that are making noise. And they're saying, hey, you need to fix this. You need to do this. One of the things that the Skype Operations Framework team has done beautifully is given the ability for that real-time feedback and that constant innovation. If I could show you what the website looked like 6 months ago, your ability to capture those different phases was a Visio diagram that you had to print on 11 by 17. It's now a click-through device that gives you each of the pieces in the different phases that's important. So what to expect going forward? So it's roadmap-centric. Okay? As we release new stuff, as we come out with new, not even new, but if we have improvements or changes or modifications, great example is, you know, when we start to look at our different IPs for Skype for Business Online, and we look at what that's going to look like. If we make a change there, you as an IT practitioner not only need to be aware, need to know what you need to do and change. Let's say that we made a change and it impacts you. Well, it's not just a matter of notifying you. It's giving you that full plan to be able to do it and giving you the forefront knowledge. It's a living, breathing framework. As you've seen from the feedback, it's changed. We changed it from this 120 asset download that you didn't know where to start to literally a step-by-step process and a wizard-based process. We will continue to update it. Incremental updates as we make changes, but you'll look at a major drop about every quarter. We had one in January, just now. We did one in October, and we originally launched in July. Because the reason is because that feedback lets us focus on what's important. So make sure, hey, if 75% of the people say that we need this, that's what we're going to focus on over what we think is our priority because it's that living, breathing. Future releases. We're going to continue to build out Operate. We just gave a huge one right now on quality and that. Go check it out. I'll show you the site and the trainings that have come. Room Systems is out. It's landing right now. The multi-regional planning. So we talked about the regionally hosted meetings. As a company, you need to think about what that means from your ecosystem. If I happen to have multinational corporation and all my internet egress happens in the US, and I have a location in Australia, moving my users to the Australia data center is not going to do me any good if they're going to round trip back through the US. So taking into considerations things like that. And so we really take it from a grassroots approach. So As you can go to the Skype Operations Framework. The virtual training is available. The assessments are there. This is one of those ones that's like, if there's any takeaway or call to action, go check out the site. If you can't remember Skype Operations Framework, aka.ms/SOF. Okay. And I want to know if somebody can get that QR code to work from their chair. Anybody got a QR reader to see if it even shows up? And the community is aka.ms/SFB community. And the reason that is, that one is our entire all-up community. It's got about 12,000 members, and so you'll be able to, did it work? Perfect. Now, sure can. No problem. So, questions, thoughts? I know I kept you in here. I kept you in here for 60 minutes of Skype Operations Framework, but
Question.
yeah.
Regarding the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I have trouble explaining what that is.
Okay.
Is there any, I like your analogy about the well, the water system, ecosystem.
Yep.
There's some mystery around the cloud.
Yep.
You know, the average user. Have you found
Yeah.
a good way of
Yeah.
explaining it?
I don't know if it's a good way. I did find a way to explain it. When I talk to an average user, I use Hotmail as an example. Okay. Said the cloud's nothing new to us. All the cloud is an internet delivered service. The cloud is something new for the enterprise because you as an individual couldn't afford to run your own mail server at home. But you could go to Hotmail or Yahoo and use their services. Well, enterprises could afford to run their own mail servers. But now they realize that it's more cost effective for them to have and secure for them to have somebody like Microsoft run their mail servers. So all it is it's an internet delivered service that a private entity could host themselves or have someone else do for them. That's kind of the way that I look at it, that everybody kind of gets. Yeah, that's the one that I use a lot. So, yeah. Yes, so we will actually broadcast. So all of these are recorded, and the presentation will also be available in the tech community for all of the sessions I do. I've got 5 sessions. So tomorrow I do Cloud PBX and Microsoft Teams, so they'll all be online. What's up? I think it goes up probably tomorrow at the latest. Okay. They're going to make me go right now and upload all these decks, so because I didn't do it. I found out I got to run it remotely from my laptop, so I was like, okay, I don't have to upload it yet. Any other questions? Yeah.
You talked about a scenario where there's multiple providers, like Cisco,
Mm-hmm.
Skype, etc. You alluded to a couple of scenarios, such as whitelisting, etc. Right? So
Yep.
other considerations that has come up, perhaps as a result of your research or lessons learned or feedback, what things are, or what are the things can you point to while we try to do
Sure.
this is an enterprise solution, weeding people off of Cisco web access?
Sure. Honestly, the biggest learning that we found was that it really comes down to users knowing that the client exists. So my wife works for a company, and they had Skype for Business. They also had GoToMeeting. And then Cisco came in and said, hey, by the way, why don't you use Jabber and WebEx? And what ended up happening was, because they were moving, there was a big training effort to make people aware of it. And so they went to this WebEx. Now, the end user still wanted to use Skype for Business, and so they still were doing it on the side. But the biggest learning is making people aware it's there, making sure the deployment is done correctly, and then share it with them. I did a video in April of 2015 when we redid the client. And we broke it into 3. We did a 15-minute step-by-step guide, we did a 4-minute what's new, and a 2-minute intro. And I figured the 2-minute intro was going to get all the hits, and the 15-minute one was going to sit somewhere and get nothing. And right now, the 15-minute one has over 400,000 hits. Because IT professionals took it and sent it to their people internally and then asked me for copies. And we would provide them with copies that they would host internally on their internal website. And what it was an ability to make people aware of what it was and what they could do. And so there's two pieces there. One, adoption services. You've got partners, all levels of partners, SOF, other, that do adoption services. And if they have followed the framework, it makes it a lot easier for them. But the other piece to that is even in MSIT, for us to make people change from using our old audio conferencing provider to using Skype for Business, at that time Link, we had to tell them, look, if you use that provider, you're going to get billed for it. You use Skype, you're not. When we moved to Link 2010, we pulled phones off the desk. It's a little extreme. It worked at Microsoft. It won't work at Boeing, right? Because of the demographic of who's working there. So it all comes down to that planning, and that's even beyond SOF, right? That's just how people look at moving and building out their practice or their own internal. Yeah?
This is actually a question from the first session that I didn't get a chance to ask.
Perfect.
It's relevant because we're kind of talking about some of the same things. And you had mentioned adoption report.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just talking about adoption. So
Yeah.
How does the adoption report look? What are you reporting?
Okay, you guys are going to get a little sneak peek. So here's a great example for adoption, okay? So what you're looking at here is my internal demo tenant. And if I come in here and I want to specifically look at, and I'm going to go back, how long ago was Ignite? 180. Actually, it doesn't even show. I guess this was our last one. So if I go in here and I look, I actually have the capability, and I can actually connect this to the adoption pack within Office 365. And my colleague Ann Michaels is doing that session, I think, tomorrow. And that's for all workloads, for IT admins. But what it allows is I can identify who's peer-to-peer, who's conferencing organizers, how much it is. I can bring it into a pivot table. I can pull it into Power BI, right? And so I have the capability. So from my standpoint, one of the ones for me is I want to know who my most active users are. And so I can come over here and I can say, okay, who is the most active in peer-to-peer? And right now it's Lauren T. Now, by the way, in a real tenant, this would be thousands, not tens. But it gives me the ability to look at how many people organized, how many participated, who was doing peer-to-peer, and this is conferencing and IMMP. And this is native in your Skype for Business report. Now, one of the things you can also do, this is where we're going to test the demo gods that I have not given my tithe to yet today. But you have the capability. I was talking about the CQD under Tools in Skype for Business. Where are we? There we are. See, is it going to work? Yay, it does. Okay, so what this allows me to do is look at my quality streams. And in this case, I haven't set it up for my inside versus outside. Now, if I'm calling Office 365, is traffic always inside or outside the network? It's a trick question. It's outside because it hits your edge. However, our location enhanced reports, you're allowed to upload your subnet reports. And so therefore, it will actually map your subnet locations to your traffic. So it'll say if it's inside or out. Does that make sense?
How are you capturing that?
So you'll go to your network team and they'll say, hey, I've got, I need the subnet map or I need the subnet list for all of our locations. And they'll give them to you, and then they're in a CSV, and you upload them into the CQD, and it automatically marks the traffic that shows up. So like at Microsoft, we're a 172 and a 10 dot framework, and so it'll actually show me which ones were internal versus like the 192, 168 that I know is home or somebody that's calling in. So it's the ability to do that. see if I have detailed reports. But the call quality dashboard gives you the ability to look at that overarching. And so you can actually look at traffic, and you can actually build out reports. If you go into these, you can actually build out, I could hit clone and change the style of that report that I wanted to look at. So if I wanted to edit it, I've got a whole bunch of different measurements that I can add. So if I wanted to add, now I'm getting nerdy, so if this is too much for you guys, we can stop. But if I wanted to go in and say, hey, by the way, I only want ones that had I want to know what my poor audio percentage was. Okay, so you'll notice that on this one, it actually shows my poor audio percentage is this blue line, which doesn't show because I don't have, I didn't do it right. But you have the capabilities. And actually, one of the best things about SOF, there's an entire session on how to do call quality dashboards to meet your requirements and your needs. And ask Anthony over here. He knows how fun, he's one of our MVPs. He knows how fun it is to work on reporting and the challenges that are there. So does that answer your adoption question? Yeah. Okay. And when we get to the call analytics, it's even better because you'll be able to use all the QoE statistics to identify not only adoption, but what modalities and look at the entire ecosystem and reporting. Okay. Any other questions?
Sorry, did you say that the Office 365 portal had to be linked to the adoption framework version?
No. So that Office 365 reporting, it's there. It's going to live there. You can get it. The call quality dashboard, which was in the Skype for Business admin center, gives you the ability to go and get call quality dashboard and do custom configurations for that. Okay. Anything else? I think I ended with 15 seconds. How about that? Thanks, guys. Make sure to do evals for both sessions.